On the girls' side, Timpview returns quite a few players from last year's state championship team. I'm going to ask you this question, Jared, because you asked me about football. Can the Timpview girls repeat as state champs?
What did I tell you about football?
Oh,
what was my response?
We'll have to hear this again.
What was my response?
You got one thing right. I hear it over and over, a broken record.
It's the same response for the girls' basketball team. Look who they've got coming back. They've got the Utah Valley Player of the Year in Gabrielle Pinniger. Mm-hmm. They've got a couple of very talented forwards. And they've got Alexa in Chelsea Bridgewater, she was amazing last year in my opinion. A whole bunch of good guards around them. And then they lost Carly Waite. And who do they have coming back? Alexis Kafusi, who was injured all of last season and played all of like 30 seconds in the state title game. So I don't see how you can say that this isn't a team that's prepared to repeat. I'm going to say they're going to do it.
I'm not going to say that, so you can rest easy. I do think injuries could play a factor in this. If they're injured again, I think Timpview was fortunate to put it together when they did last year. They had a lot of things go right for them to win that title, but I am going to agree with you on this. I think the talent's there. I think they win the region, and I think they have enough talent to do it again.
Well, I think there's only one team out there that has a chance to beat them, in my opinion, and that's Mountain Crest up north. They're very, very good. If they hadn't been injured last year,
I'm not going to say there's only one team.
I only see one.
Beat them.
I really only see one. I could be wrong. We'll see what happens during the season.
That'd be a
first. You're right. It would be a first. I'm always right. Before we get to our predictions, we're going to step away from the high school sports arena just for a second because it is rivalry week. We got to talk some BYU-Utah football since the big game's coming up on Saturday. Neil, what does each of these teams have to do to win this game?
Well, I'm going to start with Utah. I think Utah has to run the ball. I mean, to get Mac going is important for that team. Their defense played really well. The way they put the beating on Wyoming. I mean, Utah is really coming on right now. And I think if they can get that running game going against BYU, that'll make all the difference.
Well, I agree. That'll be huge. BYU, I don't believe BYU's given up a 100-yard rusher this entire season. If they can get Ray Stowers going or Darryl Mack, that'll definitely open up things for the rest of the offense. But for BYU, in my opinion, the key is going to be not giving up the ball. New Mexico gave it up 4 times last week, ended up losing pretty big in a game that they were in for most of the contest until they gave up 4 turnovers. BYU's got to hang on to the football because Utah's opportunistic. They'll try and strip it. They'll go for the pick. If BYU can win the turnover battle, I think BYU wins the game.
Turnovers are always a key, but I don't know what it is. But I know they won last year, but BYU just has not fared well against Utah. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
They've been close games.
Yeah, they
every
have been
single
close
game.
Games.
There's been like 3 blowouts in the last 20 years. I mean, that's impressive that it's that close, hotly contested.
And it's good that it looked early on like Utah was going to be terrible. So it's good for the rivalry that the Utes were able to make a run and they have a good team and it should be a good game.
I love it when you get a game with 2 teams playing well, and that's what this one's going to be.
Well, it's time for our prediction segment of the show. This is where I usually distance myself from my colleague, Jared. And there's not very many games this week, so it may be a little tougher for me to do. But let's start with girls. There's a game on Tuesday, Provo at Pleasant Grove. Girls, Jared, who do you like?
Well, I'm going to go with Pleasant Grove in this one because I think they got a lot of talent coming back. I like Whitney Giles. I like what she's able to do. I know Pleasant Grove didn't have a great season last year, but I think they played a lot of young players that are going to come on strong in this season, and I think it starts here with a win over Provo at home. Okay, well, you're wrong to start the season. I'm happy to announce that, Jared, because I like Provo in this one. I like that up-tempo style that they're going to play. I think they run past Pleasant Grove in a victory. Well, they got some talented players. Vanna Cox is sure fun to watch at point guard. Ethelene Fa'atuafe is really a talented player down low. She really improved during the season last year. I think Provo's going to be good down the road as they get some of their pieces mixed in, some of the other players. But right now, I got to go with Pleasant Grove. Okay, we go to our second girls game. Skyline at Timpview. We talked about Timpview, the girls being the defending 4A champions. Can they knock off a 5A team, Neil? They can, and they will. I'm going to take Timpview on this one. I think it may take Timpview a few weeks to get this team going, but I still like Timpview early. Well, when you have as many returning starters as they do, and they went so deep on their bench last year, they got a lot of players with a lot of experience. I think that really gives you a head start at the beginning of the season. They know what's expected. I'm going Timpview as well.
Well, we go to our first boys game, Skyline at Timpview boys. This will be an interesting matchup. Jared, who do you like?
I'm going to go with Skyline on this one. I don't know much about Skyline being the fact that we don't cover them very much, but I think Timpview is going to take some time to get things going. Michael Salazar, their point guard, moved to Springville over the summer. They're going to need to find somebody to step into that role. They lost some other good players from that team last year. I'm going with Skyline.
Well, and I know it's going to take Bronson Kafusi a little while to make that transition too. From football to basketball, but I'm going to go with Timpview. I like Timpview at home.
You believe.
I like the T-Birds. Perry Wildeboer does a good job with the team. I think he'll have them ready to go. I'm sticking with Timpview.
Okay, well, nice to know that I've got that one. Another boys game, matchup of two defending state title teams, Provo at Lone Peak. Who you taking?
Well, I'm going to take Lone Peak. Lone Peak is...
the first best team over the second best team. Okay, all
exactly.
Right.
To give you an idea how good this Lone Peak team is, I think you will see 6 players off of this team sign Division I, Division I schools.
Crazy.
It's unbelievable. There's a few underclassmen that will sign. They've already signed 3 or 4.
3 or 4, yeah.
And there'll be a total of 6. So this Lone Peak team is so good that it may be one of the best. I thought last year's Lone Peak team was as good or the best team I've ever seen, and this one could be better. So,
well, when you've got as many,
what I want you to do is not look at the final score and say Provo's the worst team in the valley, because
they're not going to be.
Okay, thank you.
They'll lose. I think they'll lose by double digits. I really do.
Too.
Provo's only got one returning starter, as opposed to Lone Peak having a bunch of players coming back with experience. Lone Peak gets the win.
Yeah.
All right, our final game. We got to give scores on this one. We're going college football for one of the few times we do it all year. Neil, who do you have in the BYU Utah game?
I'm going to go with Utah, Jerry, just because I think Utah is coming on late. They play well in Provo. I haven't seen enough from BYU in this rivalry lately to give me any confidence to pick BYU.
Okay, so what's your score?
I'm going to take Utah 28-24.
Well, I would say you definitely got to go by a touchdown or less, since just about every game's been like that over the last few years. I think BYU's the better team. I really do. I think Utah's
good.
I
just don't think they're going to win this one.
I think BYU's going to shut down the Utah running game. I think BYU gets the win. I'm going to say it's going to be 31-24 for BYU.
Okay.
Well, that's all we have time for today. We'll be back again next week to discuss more about the high school basketball season that will be getting really underway next week.